Mr. Rohit Dhar, President, Products and Technology, upGrad, and Mr. Vishwanath Ramarao, Chief Product and Technology Officer, Acko. A very warm welcome to all of you. Over to you, Mr. Ujwal.
Thanks, Manmeet, and welcome everyone. A big welcome to the participants and also to the panelists, esteemed panelists here in the group. Thanks for joining us. The human tragedy aside, which we can't really do much about other than live through it, that's the important part. Communication, as we see, is and has gone through a significant change in the last about 12 months that we've seen. Uh, a very simple example could probably be the contact centers or the call center industry, which was probably the backbone of India's digitization wave that started in the early 2000s, uh, has has got disrupted to the extent that the government came out with a notification around October 2020 about how the OSP or the call center sector is getting completely deregulated. You don't even need a registration anymore. So I think that's been a great step, but that's the reality as well. No longer do I have my contact center agent sitting in a hub and spoke kind of a model or a centralized contact center, but customer service has gone completely localized. I mean, I could have the best contact center agent sitting out of Agartala for all I care, or from anywhere from Agartala to Porbandar to from Jammu to Tikorin, wherever they might all be, right? And that also brings in a huge amount of opportunities and challenges. How can I best leverage my manpower? How can I use AI and machine learning to prevent fraud from happening at my contact center? How can I do better quality monitoring of the calls that go through my contact center? Uh, we've all got so used to digital conferences. The speed at which we interact now has gone up so high. Uh, I mean, in a normal day, we would probably have been sitting somewhere in Delhi and having this conversation with a cup of coffee in our hands. But each of us is based across from all across India, and in fact, Vishwanath is joining us and from the West Coast. And uh, I mean, it's just changed. I mean, my parents are very happy talking to people on video calls now. They don't no longer want to speak to someone in person. They are happy ordering their groceries on calls, on video calls, etc. Uh, uh, and I mean, even the advent of 5G and higher processing power on the telephone, the 5 to 10 8 square inches of real estate that each of us has in our pocket, which we don't move out of the home without. We can forget our keys, but we don't forget our phones, right? And these phones probably have the computing power of computers, which were probably more computing power than computers which we used while learning to program, all of us in our early days. So these and all of these things are bringing in a very, I would say, a disruptive change in the way enterprises communicate with their customers. Each enterprise has their own specific agenda, the specific brand positioning that they want to do, and how I want to leverage various communication channels. It's not just voice, it's not just text, it's now multimedia. How do I use all of these communication channels to enhance my brand, enhance my customer experience, enhance my revenues, decrease my bottom line, and get services to get my ultimately get an amazingly happy customer at the end. And I think it's great to have great to have Shyam and Vishwanath along with us over here, representing two very different ideologies in the insurance space. While Tata AIG has traditionally been a brick and mortar kind of an insurance company, and Acko, on the other hand, is a completely digital insurance company. And I think that'll be a great place to start off this conversation with. So, Shyam, how do you maneuver getting digitization and digital communication within the entire uh, brick and mortar kind of a framework? How do you ensure this gets adopted at scale and differentiations come through?
Hi, Ujwal. Thanks. I mean, So it's an interesting question, right? And I think that's part of the journey that Tata AG has been on even before I joined, and something that we are also driving since I've joined, right? So while we might say Tata AG is a brick and mortar company, our digital journey actually started probably 4, 5 years ago itself, right? I don't think there was any insurance company as such that devalued the need and speed for digitization. So I think it's something that's been ongoing. But yes, we do have a significant presence on the field, our distributor, our bank, our partnerships, and so on and so forth. Right. That said, I think insurance primarily is a people business, right? It's a customer business. You're serving people. And so digitization is really a mechanism for us to serve the customer better, right? So rather than, I think, starting saying we need to digitize and really change everything, there have been really two kinds of initiatives we have really driven, right? So one is the logical business as usual improvements of saying, can you bring in the right technology pieces at various parts of the entire process? So you take sales, you take servicing, you take customer experience, all of those parts, and really approach with an angle of saying, how do we make customer experience better? So we've revamped our customer website, we've launched our customer app, and then take the same experience to saying processing, issuance, servicing, and really approach it with that angle. And then the second part of it is really then that's where the innovation part of it comes in. Saying, now, given that you've had a rich history, a rich set of processes and things set up, right, and things that have worked well for ages, which of those now do you reimagine and say, given what we have with technology today, what can we do differently, better, rather than the business as usual, right? So that's where things like AI/ML comes in, saying, look, we take decisioning today on claims, on issuance, all of those. We have underwriters, we have claims examiners. Can you augment that with intelligence from AI/ML, see if it matches and exceeds that, and then maybe move to auto adjudication itself, right? So those are the kinds of innovation with AI/ML that you can bring in. Computer vision, again, can you do things with computer vision? Can we allow auto adjudication of motor claims? Can we do it in surveys of properties, right? Bringing in drone technology where you cannot reach. Adoption of video streaming, of course, has been forced upon everyone. So where you had a manual person going in to examine, survey any property or a vehicle, that has now moved completely digital, right? So part of it forced, part of it logical, and part of it is really the innovative part that really comes in. So that's kind of how that journey has been. And every project has really been from the customer experience in mind, saying, does this impact the customer? Does it give it better reach? Does it improve his stack? And that's how we drive the projects across more than anything else.
Perfect. And when you actually go around adopting these technologies, uh, how do you ensure that the manpower that works with you, the highly skilled people who've been working on each of these, adopt to these technologies? Uh, let's say focusing on communicating with the last mile customer, and there are a host of IRDA guidelines that come through in terms of how you need to communicate with your last mile customer. How do you ensure that the mindset which comes needs to come in as a culture within the organization for adoption of these comes in? I mean, could there be some specific idea or thought process or story that you could throw
No,
upon?
absolutely. Right. So I think part of it from a DNA perspective itself, right? One of the pillars for Tata AAG and Tata as a whole is customer first and empathy, right? So that drives a lot of the kind of people we have where we're trying to solve problems for the customers, right? That mentality of saying, oh, is this putting our job at risk and all that is really not the major driver. It's more how do we make an experience for the customer better? How do we enable him? And part of it, like you mentioned, right, insurance is regulated. IRDA has set guidelines. There is a strong push towards digitization, digital delivery of policies. All of that is anyway happening. So this becomes another driver. So IRDA as a regulation, that's a good driver to adopt. Your customer experience and empathy and getting a better experience for the customer is again a great driver for adoption. And third, the technology itself, right? It's not that you're replacing, it's really about a better experience in finding where there are enough problems to solve, right? Just solving one problem doesn't mean there's no work to be done, right? And so that
Yeah.
understanding of saying, look, this is just one step in a larger picture, and putting that and driving that again becomes the last driver to really drive.
Right. Wonderful. Great. Thanks. Yeah, Shyam, I'll come back to you in a bit. But Vishwanath, hi. Thanks for keeping up so late with us and being here as a part of the group. How do you see the insurance tech sector uh, going through doing this business completely through an online model as compared to an offline online kind of a model? How do you see the customer communication part of your business being different from or different or differentiated rather from the online offline business?
Yeah. Look, as India's only completely digital insurer, for us, we're probably in the second innings of digitization. Probably that's the difference for us. And what I mean by that is, we have a digitally savvy customer, right? They bought policies directly from us. They went to the app or to the website and they purchased it. They were empowered enough to make that decision. They had choices and they chose a particular relationship. And so they come in with a certain expectation to begin with, right? And that communication expectation, mapping that out and ensuring that you at least meet that expectation, if not beat it in every possible aspect of how you communicate. That's one of the biggest things that is driving us. A good example for us when we think of from the customer's perspective, when we think of AI and ML, we don't look at it just simply as like tools to enable the call center to work a little bit more efficiently. For us, these are tools to anticipate the customer need better, right? And so when we can do that better, we're going to empower our agents to be that much more effective in servicing the customer need. There's a lot of self-service already out there. And so when somebody calls us, it's typically after they've gone through some of that and it's either not working for them or there's some particular situation that they're stuck in. And so, bespoke long tail problems are being good at handling that is again, something that's different for us, right? And so when we shift that focus to the call center and the agent side of the world, we're really looking at empowering our agents. We're not looking at this as, okay, here is a call center, here are X number of warm bodies and they get this tool and they need to respond with a particular script. We're trying to train our call center agents to be good at problem solving. We're trying to help them understand the actual ecosystem and the customer need in a way where they can even maybe affect product changes as a result of some of those things that we're seeing from the call center side. Right, and we're building tools for them. This is our first internal customer, right? Like that's the way to think about it. And
Yeah.
and particularly with COVID, some of the challenges there that we faced were like, how do we extend that enterprise boundary and distribute it with so many call center folks who are sitting in so many different locations, oftentimes working from home. What was the enterprise edge where applications were allowed, and the security boundary of what was allowed had to now get extended deeply into the home. And that's changed the security posture and DNA, and trying to get that security posture right while continuing to enable our customer service agents and continuing to sort of make that proactive push to anticipate customer need and solve for that. It's a really, really hard problem. And so that, I think, is where we are now putting a significant amount of our time and effort in trying to figure out what is that script that we're going to use in order to get less reactive and much more proactive and anticipatory in what our customer service agents are able to do, and then give them the tools to be able to do that in the most efficient way possible, right? And so our customers tend to come in and say, hey, I want to communicate over WhatsApp, and I want to shift from WhatsApp to email. And by the way, this particular type of communication, I want you to call me. And so orchestration of communication while being proactive and solving that new age customer need. That is, that's a unique challenge for us, and we're embracing it with both our hands.
Also, yeah, I think one common factor that came out is essentially keeping the customer first in whatever we do in terms of our communication channels. However we do it, whether it's through process improvements that we are doing that, or whether we're doing this through actually focusing on omni-channel experiences or single experiences for our clients. But do we actually see customers adopting a much greater number of channels in this communication process? I mean, not just voice, but preferring WhatsApp or preferring Viber, Facebook.
It's not so much that they're adopting to new channels. What we're seeing really is that the customer is a lot more picky, and they have in their minds an expectation of what types of communication to go to which channels, right? So if I'm doing formal communication about a particular explanation of your bill, for example, they want to see a detailed version of that both on email as well as a smaller version of it in WhatsApp, right? And so the ability to stay intimated of key events happening as it relates to your service needs, and being able to get, for lack of a better word, sliced and diced views of that across various channels. And so being channel native in your communication, that is critical. And so you no longer have the ability to kind of say, hey, a customer will pick the channel. You have to think of your product and your service on all these various channels, and the channel native touch points that make sense to you. What type of communication goes where, and how does that all connect together so that the customer can make sense of all of this, right? So if I'm on the go and I'm doing it on my mobile phone, I'm at a garage, for example, I'm carrying my mobile phone, there's no point in probably sending email to that particular person. Maybe they're not even checking their email. And they want instant communication, and they want back and forth. They want conversational style communication. And so I think, understanding the customer need natively, and then mapping out your product and your service needs into the various channels and going as native as you possibly can with those experiences, that's the key to improving CX for us. And that's, again, really what we're spending a lot of time on, right? This orchestration, this ability to kind of find the same information in different places in the form and shape that a customer really needs. That finesse in your CX strategy and your ability to pull it off consistently at scale across the various sort of types of problems that your contact center typically deals with, or your customer service agents typically deal with. That's the hard part of what we're working on.
So orchestration all the way, ensuring that we communicate at the right time, at the right place, with the right people.
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Vish. Rohit, thanks for taking time out. And when we look at, I mean, we were discussing about this, when we look at the edtech space, especially in the last 1 year, schools haven't been functioning, kids are happy, parents are not. But apart from that, how do we ensure that the real experience of education comes across to various people when I have to communicate? It's not just my learning by rote, but learning by experience, learning by uh, visualizing things. How are edtech enterprises adopting that, especially in today's world?
Sure. Ujwal, first of all, thanks a lot for bringing me in, and hope everyone is safe there, whoever the listeners are. Uh, so, so if you think about it, Ujwal, there are multiple tenets for looking at what are students today, um, because of COVID, which has forced us into this situation. What are the elements that we should be ensuring that the students get as an exposure to, for them to be able to get the knowledge within them so that they can use it for their, for progressing in their life, if you think about it, right? So I fundamentally want to break down learning into three parts: guidance, content which gets converted into knowledge, and evaluation. And these are the three fundamentals of learning experience that I think we should be, any education looks at. If you think of edtech has always been tech driven, mostly, right? But the exposure to edtech has never happened because, unfortunately, there was no, COVID came in and it forced us to kind of explore, and there's no alternative to edtech at this point in time. We at EdTech, what we are trying to do is, with the sheer volume of traffic coming in, sheer volume of customers coming in, we're able to experiment and quickly fail fast and understand what the needs are. Exactly what Vishwanath mentioned. The goal is anticipate customer needs, and and with the volume, it's way easier now with ML/AI coming in. We're able to understand what our customers need at this moment in time, and create products, create customer experience. And again, very interesting point of view, which is a native experience, Vishwanath just mentioned. So absolutely, if you are able to understand the learner well and say, this is how the experience needs to be on WhatsApp, which is a quick transactional conversation, whereas a formal email needs to go out from an admission standpoint. But a video conferencing conversation has to happen on your laptops or on your mobile phone. A longish conversation has to happen on your laptop, while a short video of 5 minutes, 10 minutes can still continue to happen on your mobile phone. This is an element of understanding the native aspects of your mobile, of your digital or technology elements, and then leveraging them in the right places for making sure there's a holistic education experience, customer experience being created. That's what at upGrad we are looking forward to. That's what we are heading towards. Not only upGrad, I think the entire EdTech is working towards that. There is a lot of noise in terms of different kind of offerings in the market. And it's important for customers to understand what makes sense, what is relevant for them, and accordingly take a choice. So at upGrad, mostly what we're doing is we're trying to understand the phase of the customer where they are, and then creating products for them. If there's a college student and he or she is looking forward for a job, there's a skill gap that needs to be addressed. It's a very different sort of a problem than a school-going student who's deciding to go to which college he wants to get into. And very different side of a problem. So we need to first understand the customer needs, and exactly again, anticipating customers' needs, and then offering a product which will be more relevant for them. I don't think education as a sector was thoughtful at that point previously, before this pandemic, because we had this school, college going in a more of an assembly line system, and we're just running the system without even reevaluating what is the way to look at things. So that's how we at EdTech and / at upGrad are looking at things.
So, Rohit, just following up on this, I think two very clear communications that are coming out. One which has come across all the panelists so far, has been keeping the conversation going, deciding how the entire conversation experience happens.
Yes.
But and more importantly, you mentioned about how we need to segment out different kinds of conversations, different kind of communication at various levels. So out of all the technologies available today, if I were to ask you to take a punt and tell us what are the 2 or 3 communication technologies which EdTech will rely on completely going forward, what do you think would those be?
I think probably 2 most important technologies. One will be the Java backend, having a scalable backend coming in. That will really help. With, of course, a strong ML/AI element into it, so that we can anticipate. And the second one is RTC, effectively making sure there's a video conferencing, video live call capability there, because education can't just be recorded learning. It has to have an element of live. It has to have an element of live conversation. Has to have a classroom conversation. And during that process, how do we emulate how a physical classroom with whiteboards, with discussion forums, with breakout sessions, with all of those coming in, so that a student and a teacher has that relationship of being able to interact lively and ask questions and respond to the questions, chat on the side with their friends, discuss certain things, and then come back and then discuss over the forum as well. Those are the two major things. One is scalability, which would need Java on the back end, MLAI to ensure getting the right decisions, and RTC, which is more to do with the video support system.
So essentially, interactivity is no longer that the communication is again will no longer remains one-sided. It's not just tutor student learning. It is more than that. It is also two-way communication, that the
It's
responding
ecosystem.
to the feedback that one gets through in the
It is an ecosystem. That is what you need to give to the learner. Because if you don't give that ecosystem, you're not emulating the learning experience that a learner gets in a physical world. Again, if you think about it, post-COVID, it will be a hybrid model where people will have a physical, a way of getting educated, but there will also be an element of online. Right now, it's only online because we are in a situation of that. But eventually, there'll be a decent 30 to 40% element of an online course classes and courses will come in, because the variety of content will be way diverse in the online world that they can get in the offline world. And hence, people will resort to the online world.
And so, how do enterprises communicate to their individual target segments in terms of, hey, my content stands out better than the other content? How does that selection happen as we go forward?
So Ujwal, eventually, it'll not be a content game. It'll be more of a service game, which means the content will go free. If you think of Netflix, YouTube's of the world, the content is slowly becoming cheaper and almost getting freer, right? It's not the content, it's actually after that content, you will have a lot of clarifying questions. And how are you ensuring that in that context of that content and the context of that student, where the student is, the learner is, can I go ahead and clarify the questions or the doubts that the learner has, either in a one-on-one setting or in a group coaching setting, so that the learner is able to actually get something out of it versus just random gyan coming out of it. Yeah, and I think that's more important, and that's the next wave of edtech that I think will come in. It's a service.
Wonderful.
It's not content.
Wonderful. Very interesting perspective, Rohit. Thanks a lot. I'll move on to Gaurav. And Gaurav, I'll just say that you're probably the closest to the front line amongst all of us over here, right? Ensuring that the meds reach out. I mean, being one of the largest players in the space, ensuring that the meds and all the equipment reaches out. And I'm sure the demand that you would be getting, as you were mentioning, would be onerous in terms of managing your systems. But also at the same point of time, with the lockdowns and all restrictions on movement, supply chain as well gets constrained for you as an enterprise. How are you managing customer communication in this kind of a space where we should probably be, and I'm sure you're taking time out from your business right now to be with us, and there must be a lot of chaos going on in the back end to ensure that let's start communicating to people. Let's ensure that the right person gets the right messaging from us. How do you think that's happening today? What are the challenges and how are you handling those?
Yeah. First of all, Ujwal, thanks for having me on the panel. Look, lots of challenges. Before I go there, just wanted to highlight that, while 1mg is best known for its, medicines and medicine delivery and content, we actually run a fairly large online consultation and a home testing business as well, probably one of the largest in the country today. And, while the medicine business, of course, has seen unprecedented demand, it's our testing business which has just gone through the roof, right? As you can imagine, in fact, just this morning or maybe yesterday, there was a notification from ICMR recommending that that state governments actually suspend test for healthy people who are traveling between various states and cities, because the load on the testing infrastructure is extremely high. And it's not hard to imagine, but most of us won't know that the diagnostic laboratories are dealing with 10x more capacity, 10x more demand than they have capacity to serve, right?
I'm sure.
This new wave of COVID that came, I think it took everyone by a massive surprise. You go back to February, March, and we were talking about, we were writing articles on how COVID has disappeared in this country. We were talking about the BCG vaccine giving us maybe some secret superpower. And, come March, second half or April, and all shits hit the fan. And in that time, what has happened is that every healthcare provider, bar none, has had to just double down, increase their capacity, deal with, and the problem of lack of digitization, lack of technology in healthcare is not new. My colleague Shyam spoke about that just a little bit earlier, and others spoke about that as well, right? So in every healthcare provider has had to scale technology, scale processes, scale people, with the singular goal to just help out as many people as we can. It's crazy right now. Now, in such an environment, actually creates a lot of issues when it comes to consumer communication, right? And I'll give you some very, very specific examples. So our testing service, which used to do, let's say 100 tests a day, just to pick an example, right? Overnight started to get demand for 500 tests a day, okay? And we used to primarily work with third-party providers, labs like some of the largest labs in the country, Lalpath Labs, ThyroCare, etc. And while we were furiously trying to get home samples done, collections done, our collection rates had gone down to a low, right? Because you can only deal with maybe 100, maybe 200 demand. You can't deal with 500 demand, right? And these are orders that are waiting in your system, waiting to be fulfilled. And then you have diagnostic labs, which have broken down as well. So laboratories, you'll be shocked, laboratories have run out of reagents to do tests. Laboratories have run out of, the technicians have fallen sick. So half the laboratories are operating at 50%, 60% lower capacity because manpower is sick due to COVID. Machines have broken down. And, but the customer doesn't care, right? And understandably so, right? Because someone who has COVID only cares about getting a COVID positive report so they can maybe take their loved one to a hospital, right? And we struggled with this. We struggled because on the one hand, it's almost like you were in a boat trying to service lunch to someone while, or maybe trying to do CPR on someone while also just taking out water from the boat to make sure that the whole boat doesn't go underwater. And what we did was we started to put most of our team on just transparency of communication. So across the board, and empathy, of course. So across the board, all our products, first of all, what we did was we basically curtailed the supply that is available, right? So we took fewer orders that we could actually have a very, very high confidence on servicing. We changed our models of collections as well, right? So for instance, instead of doing home sample collection, we said, hey, if you guys live in dense societies, then we will send a guy there. He's able to do 50, 60, 70 collections in a day, instead of running around on a bike just doing 5 or 10 a day, right? The third thing we did was we started to push real data on cancellation rates, giving customers upfront information on what is the probability that their order, even though they've placed it, may not get serviced. We started to put information on report delivery. So all the reports that were taking, earlier 12 to 24 hours, they started to take 70 to 96 hours because of backlog in the system. So started to work on that. We started to work on sending email communications, which were very, very clear, transparent, and empathetic. to consumers. We started to tell them about the real problems that we are facing, right? So in some cases, we even send communications out saying that, hey, our collection fleet is operating at 50% capacity. Our labs operating at 40% capacity. Please bear with us. What we found out was that this is just diagnostics, right? And we did the same things on the pharmacy side as well. We have this really sophisticated data science algorithm, which basically gives customers an idea of when their orders are going to arrive to them. Okay, and it works at a very, very, very high quality breach rate. So if you book an order on 1mg and it comes late, we call it a breach, right? A breach of promise, and it operates at a sub 4-5% breach rate. And our algorithm is so sophisticated that it can actually figure out upfront queuing issues, and it can automatically adjust the buffer and the delays, right? But what we found out was that this algorithm was not aggressive enough in adding the buffers and delays. So from a 3% buffer overnight into a 15% breach rate, right? And those are tough lessons for us to learn, because our data science engineers were very confident that it will settle down in a day. It didn't settle down for 5 days, at which point we were like, okay, let the humans take over. And we just added buffers in everything and brought the numbers down. It's been a tough thing, but from a communication wise, we have just tried to be very, very honest about what the real situation on the ground is. We have canceled orders for customers we couldn't fulfill. We've told them that this is why we've canceled your orders, because our fleets are sick. There's huge, what customers often forget is that the healthcare workers are also human, right? They also have the same fears and self-preservation goals that we have. A lot of our healthcare workers have not wanted to work in this environment, and it just hats off to everyone who's going out there and putting themselves in risk's way. And, helping customers understand and empathize with those healthcare workers has helped as well. So honest, clear communication, timely communication, being upfront about the promises, being conservative on the promises that we can make, and then communicating that very, very clearly. That is what seems to be working well for us. We actually just created this other video, and which is on LinkedIn as well, where we basically also tried to bring some of the human elements out, right? We often make this all about, email and customer support and chat, right? But we don't show users enough, right? What is the life of a healthcare worker on a day-to-day basis, right? What challenges is he going through? What environment is he actually living in and trying to service these needs and requests? So what we've done is we've actually taken one day in the life of a phlebotomist, someone who goes to your home and does your samples, right? And we've just shown the human side there, right? And I think both sides are needed, right? We as a company need to definitely be transparent, honest with our customers, and the customers also need to develop empathy with providers who are going out of their way and trying the best they can to actually meet their needs, right? And we are trying to work on both of these aspects. And so far, it seems to be working, but we'll have to continue trying.
Gaurav, thanks. Very, very engrossing your experiences over the last few months and how you've been handling them last few weeks, in fact, as well. I think one thing which is coming out very clearly amongst all the panelists is very simple: focus on customer empathy, focus on customer transparency, irrespective of what may be the communication channel. That's very important. Another very a common factor that probably came out was what Shyam also mentioned and what you also mentioned about processes that need to be adopted accordingly, and it's not just the communication, but do the processes within the organization really bring in the same spirit of transparency that we need to get to our customers. So great, wonderful, thanks so much. Probably we could spend the last few minutes answering some questions that the audience has. So there's one question which we have, which is in the current scenario, how can we bring in that personal touch while using technology to communicate with customers? And probably I'll pass that question on to Vish because he was mentioning about how the about the omni-channel and the single touchpoint experience. So within this, how do you bring in the personal touch that you need to give to customers?
Yeah, I think the personal touch oftentimes comes when you have an empowered CX agent that you're working with, right? This person is not just there to do a job, but they represent your company, and the customer is going to try to interact with this person to get a problem solved. And empowering that agent with the right pieces of information everywhere in your enterprise. And so it doesn't matter whether it's on the sales side, whether it's on the, we do healthcare as well, and we have health insurance right now. And, a lot of people call into the health insurance helpline and say, hey, look, where do I find a hospital, right? Like that has an oxygen capacity to it. And so oftentimes, these agents want to help. It's not necessarily in their job description that they need to supply this additional piece of information. And they're oftentimes not trained, and some of the processes that you might be thinking of may not exist even, right? But an empowered agent who understands the customer and has that built-in training to empathize with the customer will go look up an internal database, maybe somewhere where you are able to collaboratively build the latest status on hospitals with oxygen cylinders available. And so, they're going to take that extra step forward in solving for the customer. And so I'd say one of the biggest pieces is just the agent training and their ability to, not just be, ticket solvers and closers, but really be able to interface with the customer, empathize with the customer, problem solve for the customer, and bring all resources to the organization to bear in order to get that done.
Wonderful. Yeah, leave ticket solving to the machines and get better and more empowered people to do the real problem solving.
Absolutely.
That's great. I had one more question. This was probably of Shyam. And when you mentioned about bringing in improvements in the process, how do you measure this improvement that comes through in the processes?
Absolutely. Great question. Like, I mean, I wish I could say I have it down to a science. I would say it's more an art at some point, right? But fundamentally, it's going back to the roots, right? So what is the process there for? Why was it built in the first place, and what does it achieve, right? So if you look at it at a very 60,000 feet overview, you do things as a business for one of three things, right? So either you're trying to improve your top line, get to more people, you're trying to reduce your cost, bring in efficiency, or you're trying to improve your customer experience, right? It's usually one of these three larger buckets, right? So if you can identify the major and minor aims of that, then the measurement also becomes kind of easier, right? Customer experience, you say, okay, what's my NPS? Is my CSAT improving? Kind of baseline it, measure against that. Efficiency and reach and all that again, hard. You can boil it down to metrics once you've identified that, right? So that becomes a lot easier once you can figure out what the root is.
Wonderful. Great. Um, a follow-up question is just coming through, and Rohit, maybe you want to answer this one. What are the lessons that brands have to reshape CX strategy? What are the things that brands should focus on for reshaping CX as we go ahead in a digital post-COVID or a digital era per se?
So I think brands, when you talk about brands have multiple products. Mostly, I mean, that's what I'm assuming at this moment in time. Like we have degree courses, we have certification courses, and for degree courses, the learner needs to understand to which university it is coming from, what degree am I getting, what is the opportunity of me getting a job after this degree. Very different aspect and aspiration and an outcome that the learner is expecting out of a product from a brand. Whereas a certification course is, hey, I want to just enhance my knowledge, or maybe it will help me in future to get another job. But that's not a degree that I'm banking for my life. It's just a degree to go to the next level where I am today. These are very two different aspects or different requests from the same brand. Now, the same brand needs to understand the decision-making process of the learner. What is his first important criteria, second important criteria, third important criteria, and then present that information in the order of priority that the learner wants. For example, in case of degree courses, let's say if he's doing a master's course, which university is he getting it from? What is the fee that he's getting? Is he getting a master's degree from India, or is he getting a dual master's degree from India and US, or any international university? And then if I complete this course, what are the job opportunities for after this course? And who are the alumni who have actually graduated out of this course and they're actually working in the organization? So understanding that expectation of the customer and then mapping it back and helping decide the learner make a faster decision is what brands have to think always when they're building their product. So that the decision by the learner is well informed and faster versus the learner is looking for more information. If you give the learner all the information in a buffet and say, hey, here are the factors or 5 factors that you're looking at, and here's how these information will pan out for you. And by the way, here are a few historical data that we have for you to kind of trust us. I think that's something that brand needs to start doing and presenting themselves online so that it's easier for a brand to, at least communicate what that product or the service is offering to their customers.
Wonderful. Thanks. I think thanks a lot, everyone, for this session. I think trust, empathy, customer first. These are lessons that we learned first day in business school, and these still continue on. And I think these will remain one of the the key criteria for organizations to differentiate themselves. I mean, apart from adoption of technology, which probably comes in, which all of us are ultimately aiming at, how can we be more proactive in understanding customer demand, the first interaction resolution, as some of us call it, right? So these 2-3 things are probably forming the cusp, forming the cusp of customer service, customer communication strategies as we go along. I think that's so. Thanks a lot for this sharing these sessions, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear panelists, for joining us today and sharing some key insights. I would like to thank our cloud communication partner, Route Mobile, and our partners, Accenture, Automation Anywhere, Tata Teleservices, and PwC. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back after a short 5-minute break. Stay tuned.